Jess, this obviously the date of February 14th, Valentine's Day, has kind of a special meaning to both you and Phil. Could you tell the story, please?
February 14th marks the day 2 years ago Phil walked into the athletic training room. It was, I believe, a Thursday, and came in and said, I've got this red mark on my chest, and I did an evaluation of him and determined that he had an infection in his chest and it probably needed immediate attention, and so we sent him off to the just a general family physician to have it checked out, and it was less than 12 hours later he was having emergency surgery for MRSA infection. And I think the learning point to that for Phil was it was something that he thought was just going to go away, and I think that's a key phrase that we hear a lot in the athletic training room.
Yeah, I want to ask you about what type of infection that was, but first, Phil, had you put off doing anything about it for a while?
Yes, I did. For about a week, I started feeling sick, got a lot of symptoms, and lost my appetite the weekend right before I went into that training room. And I just called my mom. I was getting pretty scared, and I called my mom, and she said, go and talk to the athletic trainers about it, and it turned out to be a lot worse than I thought.
Well, what kind of infection is that?
MRSA is an antibiotic resistant strain of staph infection. So it's not treated by your typical penicillins and things like that. So just getting that infection or treating it with a triple antibiotic is not going to kill the infection, and it allows the infection to actually spread because it's not responding to the medicine at all. So that's what makes it a little bit more serious, is it has to be treated with different medications, and it can spread to be a systemic infection, and that's the part that I think we were concerned about with the most with Phil.
Phil, you walk in there and 12 hours later you're having surgery. I mean, come on, that's got to scare you to death.
Yeah, it did. When I first got into the hospital, the doctor pulled me to the side. It was just me and Jess in the training room, and he just told me that if I were to wait a few more hours to get any treatment or get it looked at, I'll probably die and lose my life or whatever. And that kind of freaked me out at a young age. At 20 years old, it freaked me out. So he left the room, and I cried to Jess, and I was like, hey, let's just do whatever we have to do.
And you're a long way away from home as well.
Yeah, I'm from New Orleans, Louisiana. So when I called my parents, my mom kind of freaked out and was going crazy on the telephone and was like, just hanging there strong. She tried to stay positive for me and her. And it worked, because I'm still here today. So,
talking to Phil Ancar and Jess Gracia, and this is 2 years ago today, right, Jess? Can you tell the rest of the story?
Yeah, it was 2 years ago today. He had surgery that night, and actually, the thing to note about Phil when he came to me with this infection is that Phil had transferred to William Jewell College from a different school and had only been on campus for maybe 2 or 3 weeks. So he really didn't know anybody. He didn't even know the athletic training staff. He knew his coaches that had recruited him, but really didn't have a relationship with his teammates or anything like that. And so this was a really hard time for Phil, I felt like, and it turned out to be more than just an MRSA infection for Phil. The infection weakened his body, and after a long battle, it actually took the entire semester for us to kind of come to any type of resolution for Phil. But a long battle throughout the semester, it was determined that Phil has systemic lupus, and so it's an immunosuppressant disease, and so it was something that the antibiotics that he was on allowed to surface, and he ended up, I mean, it was probably a month and a half, 2 months before Phil was even able to attend class and have any type of energy. Looking at Phil today, he looks like a completely different person compared to what I saw that first semester. Just this small, frail little guy, and quiet, which I think we all know Phil Ancar is not a quiet person anymore. So it's been neat for the last 2 years to grow with Phil and to see him flourish and know what a challenging first semester he had here at William Jewell. And it speaks to his character a lot too.
Let me talk about the flourishing part a little bit, because we saw you play football, and now you're an assistant with the men's basketball team, so flourishing is, I guess, the right word.
Yeah, I guess. I just can't sit still. It's kind of that month, those couple months kind of, it made me realize that sitting still is not my cup of tea, and just sitting around and not interacting with the guys and the kids around the campus is not what I like to do. So I just tried to change it up. Like you said, I played football. It was good. That month when I didn't know anybody, all of my teammates came and visited me in the hospital, even though they didn't know me. My coaching staff, they visit with me daily and came and checked on me in my room when I moved back to the dorm and stayed in my room. So it kind of was a family environment. It wasn't just Jess. She started it all, but she kind of broadcasted it to the whole campus. And I felt the love from everybody. The president came and visited me, and everyone came and visited me. So it made me realize that this was a good choice when I transferred in, and it was a blessing. You know what I mean?
I was going to ask you, do you look at it now as a blessing, considering the things you found out about your health?
Yes, sir. I feel as though I talked to my parents right after the surgery and after everything had happened. When I went home, I told my mom that I didn't want to come back to Jewel. I just wanted to work on my health and get myself back to, because it was something totally different from being a healthy football player into losing 40 pounds overnight. And I talked to my parents and I cried to my mom and I was like, maybe this isn't the right fit for me. Maybe I made the wrong decision. What if God is telling me that, hey, you shouldn't be at Jewel? And my mom she felt otherwise. She felt as though if I wasn't at Jewel and these symptoms would have surfaced, then I probably would have lost my life. So I looked at it that way, and I just rehabbed myself to gaining my weight back and preparing myself for the season.
Phil, could you tell the story? Do you mind telling the story about what was happening with your mom and dad the same time that you were in the hospital?
Well, I talked to my mom the day I got admitted to the hospital, and she said that her and my dad were going to drive up and we'll be here when I get out of surgery. And I made a promise that she would be here. I was like, I don't think I can get through this without you guys. So she said, okay. So I gave the phone to Jess, and I went back into the operating room, and something happened to my parents. They got into a car accident with an 18-wheeler, and Jess didn't tell me until the days they got there later.
This is the first time that I talked to Phil's mom, and so the first thing she said to me was, Jess, we've been in a near car accident. I don't want you to tell Phil. And of course, obliged to a mother that her son is getting ready to go into the OR. And so the next morning, I came in to see Phil and check in on him that morning before work. And he says, Jess, my parents were almost in a car accident last night. And I said, I know, Phil. And he said, you knew? He said, why didn't you tell me? And I said, Phil, I wasn't going to tell you something like that, just getting ready to go into the OR. I said, and your mom asked me not to, and I'm never going to, try to upset a mother intentionally. And so I think that just kind of, I don't know, it just really started to build a foundation of a relationship between Phil and I and his family as well. I'm still very close to his mom to this day, and she speaks very highly of what we've done, and I think that just really speaks to our staff and what we as athletic trainers are about. And I think that's what's most important for me, and I think is my proudest moment is being able to be there for our student athletes.
Jess, Phil, that's an incredible story. Thank you for sharing it with us.
Well, thank you very much.
And we'll be back with more in a moment on the HyVee Halftime Report.